Congratulations to everyone who joins our era. Channel 24 is covering key news from Ukraine and around the world. I'm Sofia Troszczuk, and I'll be in the studio for you this hour and next. The Channel 24 team has already gathered the most important news for you, so let's discuss the situation in the regions, at the front line, and in the international arena together. At around 4:20 a.m., the occupiers launched rocket attacks on Kharkiv and its surroundings. In Chuhuiv, the private sector was hit, resulting in 5 light injuries: a 4-year-old boy, a 14-year-old girl who had a stress reaction but didn't need hospitalization, and 2 women treated on site, according to the regional military administration. In Kharkiv, the enemy targeted an industrial area, causing trees and shrubs to catch fire across 150 square meters. In the Slobitsky district, another attack set a 2-story private house on fire. A private house was also damaged, and 8 people were injured. Izium and Kupiansk faced severe difficulties. The invaders shelled local communities, resulting in 6 victims, according to preliminary reports. There is also destruction. Emergency services were working at the site. The situation in the Donetsk region is difficult. Vadim Filashkin reported a Russian attack on Kramatorsk during the night. A hotel in the city was also targeted, leaving 3 people wounded. 1 more person is under the rubble. All of the injured are journalists, citizens of Ukraine, the United States, and the United Kingdom. In addition to the hotel, the attack damaged a nearby high-rise building. Authorities, police, and rescuers are working at the scene. Rubble is being cleared and rescue operations are ongoing. The day before, occupiers killed another person in Kotlin, Donetsk region. 1 person was wounded in the village, and another in Kostiantynivka. This brings the total number of casualties to 5 killed and 6 wounded. Residents near the front line are urged to evacuate to safety. Despite Ukrainian operations in Kursk, the Russian offensive near Pokrovsk has intensified, forcing thousands of civilians to evacuate from a city previously considered safe, reports The Washington Post. On Wednesday evening, 10-year-old Ivan was sitting alone on a swing, the only child on the playground near his home. According to him, his family was packing and planning to leave on Friday. When asked if he was sad, he shook his head. "I don't want to hear these sounds," as distant explosions were heard. A truck with a HIMARS missile system provided by the United States drove behind him, heading for the front line. Ivan continued to swing. Police report over 45,000 people, including more than 3,000 children, remain in Pokrovsk. Civilians have been ordered to evacuate, with many leaving recently or planning to do so. Deputy Commander Ruslan 42 of the 68th Brigade said he hasn't experienced such intense fighting anywhere else since joining the army in fall 2022. "They go, go, go. It's just waves of meat. It's crazy," he said, comparing Russians to ants that march and push forward even as their fellow ants drop dead beside them. He expects a long battle for Pokrovsk, similar to Bakhmut. "I really don't want it to be captured. Maybe they will redirect their troops to Kursk. Maybe it will be easier, and we will be able to defend Pokrovsk longer. But since they are coming now with such intensity, no one knows." Rostislav, a 24-year-old soldier with the 151st Mechanized Brigade, suggested in a Washington Post article that street fighting would begin in Pokrovsk within a few weeks. Russia struck a number of cities on the night of August 25th, attacking at least 6 regions. The invaders attacked Ukraine with 9 Shahed drones and various missiles, but most of the threats were neutralized by air defense forces. Chernihiv, Sumy, Kharkiv, Donetsk, and Mykolaiv regions were attacked with missiles of various types. 8 Shaheds were shot down by mobile firing groups in Mykolaiv region. On the evening of August 24th, the enemy shelled Sumy. Firefighters rescued 3 people from the site. As a result of the airstrike, shrapnel damaged private houses. Preliminary reports from the regional military administration indicate 6 people were injured, including some in serious condition, and 1 person died. Medical care is being provided, and the aftermath of the attack is being addressed. At night and in the morning, Russians fired 27 times at the border areas and settlements of Sumy region. 75 explosions were recorded, with attacks from aircraft bombs, MLRS, mortars, and artillery. American analysts from the Institute for the Study of War say Ukraine's ability to strike Russia's rear is crucial. Lifting restrictions on Western weapons will enable Ukraine to target key support points for Russian forces. A senior Biden administration official recently said Ukrainian strikes with Western weapons wouldn't be effective due to Russian aircraft redeployment. However, this assessment overlooks how Russian forces use shelters. The redeployment of Russian air assets from Russian air bases in the area of operation of the ATACMS does not eliminate the benefits of using the ATACMS against other Russian military targets. Military and paramilitary sites, according to an Institute report. However, the United States currently prohibits Ukrainian forces from using ATACMS missiles to strike military targets in Russia and only allows strikes using U.S.-provided GMLS-equipped HIMARS. This allows Ukraine to hit only 20 of the 250 targets it can hit.
Вразити лише 20 із 250 об'єктів, якими вона може вразити.
Only 17 of these 250 sites are airfields, and it is unlikely that the Russian military will redeploy assets to all other 233 sites to the same extent as it did with aviation assets. It would be wrong to argue against allowing Ukraine to strike targets in Russia solely because of the redeployment of air assets, without considering the many other facilities supporting Russia's war against Ukraine. The review points out that Ukrainian forces do not need to strike every Russian military and paramilitary facility within range of Western weapons to begin to create significant operational pressure on the Russian army. Ukrainian drone strikes on the Russian rear threaten some facilities, but aren't enough to force a major redistribution of Russia's logistics and support systems. The threat to Russia's rear areas is also likely to force Russian military commanders to decide how to allocate their limited air defense and electronic warfare assets to protect a larger geographic area. Russian propaganda is outraged by the detention of Pavel Durov, the founder of VKontakte and Telegram in France. A Russian pro-war channel claimed the chief of communications of the Russian army was de facto detained. The invaders and their propaganda actively use Telegram for military purposes and spreading disinformation. They face no restrictions or penalties for this. Dmitry Medvedev commented on Pavel Durov's arrest in France. For all our common enemies, he is Russian and therefore unpredictable and dangerous. Indeed, Russia is unpredictable and dangerous, for the civilized world, but why are they proud of it? Well, the Russians say about themselves that you can't understand Russia with your mind, so we'll stay there. The deputy chairman of Russia's Security Council said he had warned Durov about this outcome. Russian businessman Pavel Durov, founder of Telegram, was detained in France. Durov was detained at Le Bourg Airport on August 24th. It happened right after his private plane landed. French TV channel TF1 reported that Durov was arrested with a bodyguard and a woman. The detention was part of a preliminary investigation under a French warrant. Durov arrived in France from Azerbaijan. By the way, Pavel Durov has been a French citizen since 2021. Air transport gendarmerie officers executed the arrest. Durov was already wanted upon landing. French judicial police issued the arrest warrant. The reason for the detention was a telegram to the social platform. There were accusations of facilitating drug trafficking and crimes against children. Justice believes that the lack of moderation, cooperation with law enforcement, and the tools offered by Telegram, disposable numbers, cryptocurrencies, etc., makes it complicit in drug trafficking, crimes against children, and fraud. This search warrant was valid if and only if Pavel Durov was on the territory of the country. Yesterday he made a mistake. We don't know why, a source close to the investigation told TF1. Knowing that he was a non-grat persona in France, Pavel Durov used to travel to the Emirates, the former Soviet Union, and South America. He traveled very little in Europe and avoided countries where Telegram is monitored. On Ukraine's Independence Day, August 24th, President Zelensky signed a law banning religious organizations linked to Russia in Ukraine. The law was published in the official parliamentary journal, Golos Ukraini. The law aims to ban the Russian Orthodox Church and affiliated organizations in Ukraine, prohibit propaganda of the Russian world ideology, and prevent its promotion through religious groups. Law takes effect the day after publication. This week, the Verkhovna Rada supported a bill to ban religious organizations linked to the Russian Orthodox Church, including the Moscow Patriarchate in Ukraine. This is positive news, as the project includes examining communities likely linked to the Russian Orthodox Church. Relevant agencies are developing an action plan that includes a religious examination of communities to determine ties to the ROC. The law comes into force in 30 days, but UOC MP communities are given as much as 9 months to break ties with the ROC. The law introduces the possibility of withdrawing state or municipal property leased to UOC MP structures. The law aims to prevent churches from operating under the control of Russia, which is waging aggression against Ukraine. Religious organizations suspected of cooperating with the Russian Orthodox Church will be checked by an expert commission to be established by the State Service of Ukraine for Ethnic Policy and Freedom of Conscience, DSS. If a violation is found, the SSS will order the church to correct it. According to Natalia Pipa of the Voice faction, the State Service for Ethnic Policy and Freedom of Conscience lacks the staff to thoroughly examine thousands of parishes for ties to Russia. According to her, the service currently has a staff of just over 30 employees who will need to assess 800 parishes. The law requires the SSS to examine OCMCP organizations for ties to Russian influence centers. If a violation is found, the state service will order the church to make corrections. In case of violation of the deadlines by a religious organization, its activities may be terminated in court. In this regard, the number of SES employees is not enough, the MP believes. She emphasizes the need for more staff and additional funding for the service. The Cabinet of Ministers would need to adopt resolutions and amend the budget. Ukrainian Orthodox Church of the Moscow Patriarchate responded to the bill's adoption. The Ukrainian Orthodox Church will continue to live as the true church, recognized by the overwhelming majority of practicing Ukrainian believers and local churches around the world. This is an objective thing. Any attempts to ban an objective thing will only lead to discredit, including international discredit, of those who want to implement it somehow. He said the Ukrainian Orthodox Church will continue as usual. Banning the church could discredit those who attempt it. He claims that the law voted on today is no longer about the church itself, but about its property. According to Metropolitan Climate, this situation resembles historical parallels with the communist past. He stressed the law targets organizations affiliated with foreign centers. The UOC bishop claimed they have no ties to Russia, and any accusations are manipulative, with no Ukrainian documents to support them. He also noted that the All-Ukrainian Council of Churches supported banning organizations linked to the Russian Orthodox Church. This was stated on the Interfaith radio station's website. They condemned the UOC MP for being an accomplice in the Russian invaders' crimes against humanity. The statement also highlights that Russian aggression, which has killed clergymen and destroyed churches, is the main threat to religious freedom in Ukraine. We reaffirm our statement of April 11, 2023, that partnerships and freedom of religion and their protection by the state are the basis of church-state relations in Ukraine. No organization based in a country that has committed military aggression against Ukraine and is governed by that aggressor state can operate in Ukraine. We support the legislative initiative of the President of Ukraine to make it impossible for such organizations to operate in our country, which also has broad political and public support. Over 100 Ukrainian Orthodox Church clergymen from the Moscow Patriarchate have faced criminal charges since Russia's invasion. The court passed sentences on 26 of them. This is the official information from the Security Service of Ukraine. We will discuss this decision and its implications with a political science and religious scholar. Andrei Kovalev has already joined our show. Mr. Kovalev, welcome and thank you for joining us to discuss the most important issues. Glory to Ukraine, glory to the heroes. We now have a law banning religious organizations linked to the Russian Federation. In your opinion, will it help to overcome those agents, adherents of the Russian world, who continue to hide behind cassocks in Ukraine? Well, first of all, I want to say that you just quoted Metropolitan Clement, the spokesman, as they call themselves, of the Ukrainian Orthodox Church of the Moscow Patriarchate. Actually, I would say the Russian Orthodox Church in Ukraine. And he says that they have nothing to do with the Russian Orthodox Church. But if you and I open the charter of the so-called Ukrainian Orthodox Church of the Moscow Patriarchate and read it carefully, it says in black and white that the Ukrainian Orthodox Church, Moscow Patriarchate, is part of the Russian Orthodox Church until 2022. Thus, in April 2022, during the full-scale aggression, this religious organization amended its charter, but despite everything, they left the mention of the Russian Orthodox Church there, although they camouflaged it. It says that in its statutory activities, the Ukrainian Orthodox Church is guided by the charter of Patriarch Alexei II of Moscow. And when we open this letter of the Patriarch, it is written in black and white. The Ukrainian Orthodox Church is part of the Russian Orthodox Church. That is, the representatives of the Moscow Patriarchate in Ukraine cannot renounce their to speak parent organization, cannot renounce the spiritual center in the country of the aggressor, unfortunately. I honestly belong to those people who are skeptical about the adoption and effectiveness of this law. Let me explain. 5 similar laws were registered in the Verkhovna Rada, including the one that was adopted, and 4 alternative ones. The leadership of the Verkhovna Rada supported the government's law, although it was the weakest of all in terms of ensuring national security in the religious sphere. The law outlines a complex process for banning religious organizations with spiritual centers in the aggressor country. For example, imagine that the State Service for Ethnic Policy and Freedom of Conscience needs to conduct religious studies of the statutory documents of all religious organizations that consider themselves or that could, in principle, be affiliated with the Russian Orthodox Church. If documents linked to the Russian Orthodox Church, the State Service for Ethnic Policy and Freedom of Conscience will submit them to court. The Russian Orthodox Church isn't the only religious organization in Ukraine. According to my estimates, this is at least about 10,000 religious organizations that have their spiritual center in the aggressor country. That is, imagine that in the best case scenario, 10,000 religious examinations will need to be conducted. 10,000 lawsuits will need to be filed against Ukrainian judges, and in principle, knowing the quality of the judicial system in Ukraine. At the very least, the State Service for Ethnic Policy and Freedom of Conscience will need to conduct a religious examination of the charters of all diocesan administrations of the Russian Orthodox Church in Ukraine. It should be noted that in one Ukrainian administrative region, there may be about 3 dioceses of the Moscow Patriarchate. That is, do the math. We have 24 oblasts plus the Autonomous Republic of Crimea, and in each oblast there are 3 dioceses of the Moscow Patriarchate. So we get a number that is about 80 religious organizations, at least 80 religious studies experts, at least 80 judges. So I am skeptical. In addition, in the second reading, obviously the leadership of the Verkhovna Rada began to look for a compromise, perhaps looking for votes to pass this law. And the transitional provisions state that the State Service for Religious Policy and Freedom of Conscience can begin religious examinations only 9 months after the law comes into force. Dear friends, I may disappoint some people, but on Thursday, when the law was passed, I saw a flurry of news. The Russian Orthodox Church is banned in Ukraine. Unfortunately, it is not banned yet. And I am simply amazed at the government's ability to create, communication victories where there are none. That is why many Ukrainians have the impression that as of today, the Moscow Patriarchate has disappeared like dew in the sun. No, unfortunately, it did not disappear. Only in 9 months, the State Service for Ethnic Policy and Freedom of Conscience will have the right to begin religious studies. Until the law is published in Golos Ukraini, it is not in effect, so the State Service for Ethnic Policy and Freedom of Conscience cannot begin its work. I was initially skeptical about the president signing it, but he has now signed it. Державна служба з питань політики і свободи совісті зможе почати свою роботу. В той самий час ухвалення цього закону це недостатні заходи. Друзі, я хочу At the same time, the adoption of this law is not enough. Friends, I want to say, do not forget, and this must be remembered, that in the net of the Moscow Patriarchate, which I, as a religious scholar, can characterize as a quasi-religious organization, that is, a political organization hiding behind a religious shell, there is a kind of ersatz with signs of a totalitarian sect. This is extremely harmful for people and for the believers themselves. And there are millions of Ukrainian citizens in this quasi-religious organization with signs of a totalitarian sect. Now our task is to extend a helping hand to these millions of Ukrainians. Obviously, I do not place my hopes in a law that prohibits the activities of religious organizations with a spiritual center in the aggressor country. The law also applies to Russian old believers in Ukraine, though I believe they pose no threat to national security. Unlike the Moscow Patriarchate, they are a disciplined group and comply with Ukrainian laws.
Вони себе якраз демонструють, на відміну від Московського патріархату, дуже дисциплінованою релігійною організацією і виконують усі закони, які ставить до них українська держава.
In 2018, the Verkhovna Rada passed a law requiring the renaming of religious organizations with a spiritual center in the aggressor country. The Moscow Patriarchate ignored this law, while Russian old believers in Ukraine complied by noting their spiritual center in Russia in their charters and name. More hope for real deconstruction and disintegration. The Russian Orthodox Church in Ukraine is not the reason for the law banning the ROC, but the fact that Ecumenical Patriarch Bartholomew feels responsible for Ukraine. When in 2016 the Verkhovna Rada first addressed Ecumenical Patriarch Bartholomew with a letter asking him not only to recognize the autocephaly of the Ukrainian Orthodox Church and grant the Tomos, but also to unite all Ukrainian Orthodox Christians. The Ecumenical Patriarch fulfilled his obligations by granting the Tomos and recognizing autocephaly, but Orthodox unity remains incomplete. Unfortunately, several million Ukrainian Orthodox Christians are in a harmful Moscow schism, and not just a schism. From the point of view of Orthodox dogma, this religious organization, or a similar Orthodox organization, has actually been spreading heretical doctrine for 30 years. The answer here is very simple. I always say this. The Orthodox Church teaches its believers that salvation is possible only through Jesus Christ. For 30 years, the Moscow Patriarchate in Ukraine has taught that salvation requires unity with Moscow, and that departing from it means losing salvation. That is, listen carefully, they have replaced God with Moscow. So this is not only a Moscow split. Therefore, this is not only a Moscow schism, but also a Moscow ethnophilic heresy, which the Universal Orthodoxy has condemned. I am more hopeful about the fact that a delegation from the Ecumenical Patriarch, headed by Metropolitan Hilarion, primate of the Ukrainian Orthodox Church in Canada, an ethnic Ukrainian, Bishop Hilarion Rudnik, has recently arrived in Kiev. This delegation also includes Metropolitan Job Getcha of Pisidia, a Canadian of Ukrainian descent, and Patriarchal Deacon Epiphanius Kamyanovich. These are Ukrainians who understand the situation in Ukraine very well and can communicate directly and without interpreters with representatives of the Orthodox Church of Ukraine and the Moscow Patriarchate. They also had a meeting with His Holiness Patriarch Filaret, who is considered an important part of the negotiations to unite the Orthodox in Ukraine, as Patriarch Filaret claimed that he had moved away from unity with the Orthodox Church of Ukraine. Also, on behalf of the Ecumenical Patriarch, as far as I know, the delegation met with the primate of the Ukrainian Greek Catholic Church, Major Archbishop Sviatoslav Shevchuk. Many meetings have been held, and the delegation is now assessing the prospects for Orthodox unity in Ukraine. Obviously, in the coming days, the delegation will go to Istanbul to meet with the Ecumenical Patriarch to report on the situation. We must understand that now we have a historic chance for the hierarchs of these Orthodox jurisdictions, under the auspices of the Ecumenical Patriarch, to find a compromise and unite, creating the unity of the Ukrainian Orthodox that Ukrainians need so much now, especially in a time of full-scale aggression. Even if this unity requires that some of the hierarchs sacrifice their own interests for the sake of the unity of the Church, this must be done. There were examples 5 years ago. Metropolitan Simeon of Venetia, who was in the Moscow Patriarchate, sacrificed his own interests by renouncing the Moscow Patriarchate, although he had everything there, and joined the Orthodox Church of Ukraine. Metropolitan Alexander Drabinko of Pereyaslav and Vishnev, who was also an important person in the Moscow Patriarchate, did the same, but renounced his private interests and joined the OCU. Metropolitan Mikhailo Zinkevich of Lutsk and Volyn, who could have become the head of the Orthodox Church of Ukraine at the Unification Council, withdrew his candidacy, making way for Metropolitan Epiphany, and he also sacrificed his interests for the unity of the Church. Now is the time for hierarchs to set aside personal interests for the unity of the Ukrainian people and Church, and to find a compromise. Many on Facebook criticize this idea of uniting with the Moscow Patriarchate's FSB branch. These people are Ukrainian citizens and will remain here. And it is obvious that there are a large number of pro-Ukrainian citizens in the Moscow Patriarchate who can now participate in the disintegration of the Moscow Patriarchate in Ukraine and join the Orthodox Church. Obviously, a part of them will remain in Ukraine, and I'm sorry, perhaps they can be called sectarians, convinced supporters of Moscow. We cannot avoid this. We don't have to look far. Back in the 1990s, the Estonian Orthodox Church was divided in this way. In the 1990s, the Estonian Orthodox Church was divided in a ratio of 70 to 30. 70% of the priests, believers, and communities have moved to the Ecumenical Patriarch, but 30% have remained loyal to the Moscow Patriarchate. And what do we see? These 30% are losing support in Estonia every year. Every year, fewer and fewer parishioners remain with the supporters of the Moscow Patriarchate in Estonia. The same future awaits the Moscow Patriarchate in Ukraine, but only if there are people in the Orthodox community who will want the unity of the Ukrainian Orthodox and not create information provocations. I've already read on various, dumps, which for some reason people trust, that the delegation of the Ecumenical Patriarch was dissatisfied with the meeting with the hierarchs of the Moscow Patriarchate. But how do you know? Let the delegation comment on this or the head of the current Moscow Patriarchate. We haven't heard statements from either, and those spreading rumors likely oppose Orthodox unity in Ukraine. Mr. Andriy, thank you very much for your analysis and for your optimism in this matter. This is a difficult issue for many Ukrainians, but it remains important for us because it is important to eradicate the Russian world and the Russian Orthodox Church from our society. I hope very much, perhaps even utopianly, that sooner or later we will be religiously independent from the Russian Federation, our enemy, and they will not be able to further zombify Ukrainians. This is really very important. Thank you for finding time for our program. As you and I understand, the issue of the Orthodox Church is a matter of national security and the future of the Ukrainian people. Everything is falling into place, and we must understand that we are interested in peace and tranquility in this area, without Russian interference. Then we will have peace and tranquility on this front and a secure future. This is the only way to treat it. I agree with you 120%. I hope that someday we will discuss positive developments in these aspects. In the meantime, thank you for finding time for our broadcast. Andrei Kovalev, a PhD in political science and religious scholar, was on the line with us. We talked about the religious situation, and I want to add that this is really very important. Sometimes we level down important aspects of Russian aggression by focusing on the physical, conventional actions of the aggressor country. But let's not forget that Russia wants to penetrate both our minds and Ukrainian hearts. The Moscow Patriarchate has been doing this for decades, claiming that Moscow is a great friend of Ukraine. But after 2014, and especially after 2022, we finally realized that this is not the case. Therefore, independence from the Russian world and the Russian Orthodox Church is very important.
50% зрозуміли, що так не є. Тому ось ця незалежність від руського міра, незалежність від російської православної церкви, це є дуже і дуже важливо.
Because the biggest difference between the Russian church and Ukrainian churches is that religious freedoms in our country are much greater. Religious communities are not persecuted here, as they are in the Russian Federation. The big difference is that the Russian Orthodox Church is part of the Russian propaganda machine that calls on Russians to go to war, calls this war sacred, and calls for the elimination of some evil in Ukrainians. And then we see what kind of evil is in quotation marks. Perhaps the children's hospital Omadit, which was shelled by the Russians on July 8th. These questions remain rhetorical. At the same time, Ukrainian churches of different religions and faiths are working for peace and victory of Ukraine, for ensuring peace so that we can all live, develop, and think what we want, but without compromising the national defense of our country. That is why these issues have been on our agenda for a long time.
Саме тому ці питання у нас із вами на порядку денному упродовж тривалого часу.
Well, the religious hour has run a bit long, so at the end of our broadcast, on a Holy Sunday, I will, as they say, make an announcement in the parish. Dear guests, dear family, the traditional summary of our hour. No matter what news we discuss, the top topic on the agenda is to help the Ukrainian Defense Forces, who are actually fighting evil at the front. And now we are raising funds for 10 drones. It was produced in Ukraine for the Special Operations Forces. These drones can fly 50 kilometers into the enemy's rear, but in good hands and under good favorable conditions, they can fly longer. And the fighters know this for sure. In addition, a colleague and very good friend of ours serves in the unit we are currently helping, so it is an honor to help with this collection. I hope you will join those who have already done so. Many thanks to you. The price of the issue is 430,000 UARs. But with your help and God's help, we have already raised almost half, 49% of this amount. I really hope that we will be able to raise this money as soon as possible. You know, in the next hour, which I'm going to announce in a little bit, we will talk about some decisions that Ukraine is waiting for from its Western allies regarding long-range weapons and their use in Russia, into the depths of the Russian Federation. While our diplomats are still working on this, there is no decision yet. While we heard a sharp, critical no on the F-16 earlier, that no turned into a yes in late July 2024. There is a lot of time between bureaucracy and our allies' fears of escalation, and so far Ukraine has been unable to implement its plan to strike targets in the Russian Federation. And destruction of what Russia uses in its military offensive against our country, drones play a very important role. Drones help at the front, strike deep into the Russian Federation, and allow us to see the enemy around the clock. That's why there are so many drone collections. We hope that soon we will be able to complete some fundraising and report that we have a completely different time and have covered all the needs of our guys and girls. But for now, the agenda is to help the Ukrainian military, in particular in the form of drones, which have really changed the course of the war.
Всі потреби наших хлопців і дівчат вдалося закрити, але, як то кажуть, не сьогодні. Сьогодні на порядку денному допомога українським військовим, у цьому випадку в безпілотниках, які, направду, змінили хід війни.
Thank you for your contributions and for joining me. We'll now take a short break, after which we will definitely return to this studio, so don't switch away.